until the coup of Kais Saied in 2021. Tunisia was considered a democracy, was considered a flawed democracy, not a perfect democracy, because I don't think that there is a perfect democracy anywhere in the world. But it was a democracy. People enjoyed freedom of speech, freedom of organization. We enjoyed free and fair elections. We had at least 4 or 5 free and fair elections during those 10 years with international observers and over 20,000 Tunisian observers from various civil society organizations. Tunisia was on the path of democracy and was the hope of many Arab Democrats and Muslim Democrats all over the world who were looking at Tunisia as a model for the entire region. Unfortunately, since the coup of 25 July 2021, Kais Saied has taken control of all the institutions of the state, from the judicial institution to the legislative institution to, of course, all the executive branches, including the government. He has written a new constitution by himself and passed it in a referendum in which only actually less than 1/3 of the Tunisian voters participated. Then he had an election for a legislative branch in which less than 11% of the voters participated. And now we are all expecting to have a presidential election at the end of this year, sometime in October and November, basically 6 months from now. But still people are waiting for the official announcement from the president and from the executive branch and the independent institution for the elections to announce when the elections will take place. So things in Tunisia have gotten worse in terms of human rights, in terms of freedom of speech. And this is what we intend to talk about and intend to highlight today in this webinar. We have 4 excellent speakers who will give us a lot of information on the situation on the ground in Tunisia in terms of human rights and focusing especially on the political prisoners. So we will start with Mr. Abdelrazak Al-Kilani. Just brief introduction for each one. Mr. Abdelrazak Al-Kilani is a well-known lawyer. He was the Dean of the Lawyers Association in Tunisia. And he was also a minister in Tunisia as well. And he represented Tunisia at the UN. It was the permanent representative of Tunisia to the UN in Geneva. And now he is a leading human rights lawyer and activist in Tunisia. He was one of the founding members of the National Salvation Front. And as I said, he was the former National Bar Association. After Mr. Kilani, we have Salsabil Shalali. Salsabil is the Tunisia director at Human Rights Watch. She is in charge of research for Tunisia in the Middle East and North Africa division. Before joining Human Rights Watch, she worked as a journalist covering North Africa at the Agence France Presse news agency in Tunis, and previously worked as a freelance journalist in Algeria, Morocco, and France. After these 2 eminent speakers, we have 2 representatives of the families of the political prisoners. Yusra Ghannouchi is the daughter of Sheikh Rached Ghannouchi, and she will speak to us about the condition in which Mr. Ghannouchi is living right now. What is he accused of? What are the charges against him? Has he been tried? So we will try, and what are his living conditions or his arrest conditions right now? Hopefully Yusra will enlighten us about that. Mr. Ilyas Chaouachi is the son of Mr. Ghazi Chaouachi, former minister and former Secretary General of the Tayar Demokrati, the democratic current in Tunisia. And Mr. Chaouachi has been arrested in jail and accused of plotting against the state. So Mr. Ilyas will tell us more about the conditions in which Mr. Ghazi Chaouachi is undergoing right now. So we will have, each speaker will have about 12 minutes to make his or her presentation. And then hopefully we will have about 15, 20 minutes for Q&A. Welcome everybody. If you want to ask questions, you can ask in the chat. You can ask in the Q&A button using the Q&A function, or you can raise your hand and we will give you the mic and you can speak to the whole panel afterwards, after they finish their presentations. So there are 3 ways to ask your questions. We hope to make it as interactive as possible. So we'll start with Mr. Kilani. Abd Razak, مرحبا بك.
Hello, Salam. Thank you first for the invitation, Mr. Radwan, and hello for everybody. I would first ask that allow me to remind that after the revolution of dignity and freedom of January 2014, Tunisian elected a national constituent assembly which prepared and voted a new constitution on January 27, 2014. This constitution gave us a modern regime providing for the separation of powers with a legislative power, an executive power, and a judicial power. All human rights were guaranteed in this constitution, including freedom of expression and association and political activities, all other rights, including the presumption of innocence and the right to a fair trial. We had a judicial authority exercised by the Superior Council of the Judiciary, which is elected in particular by judges and lawyers. This council ensures, according to the Constitution, in particular the protection of law, constitution, and rights and freedoms. Despite certain difficulties, the period of democratic transition did not experience notable violation or human rights or political prisoners. It is from the coup d'etat of Kais Saied of July 25, 2021 that the attacks on rights and freedoms began. By taking over all powers after dissolving the parliament and the high council judiciary of the judiciary, and by changing the constitution and in the name of the fight against corruption, Kais Saied began a campaign of repression against his political opponents. Kais Saied issued a decree law on September 13, 2022, number 54, on cybercrime to initiate criminal proceedings against all free voices belonging to all political tendencies. This repression and this prosecution affected 121 deputies, and at their head, the president, the legitimate president of the parliament, Mr. Rached Ghannouchi, the later in pre-trial detention as you know, for more than a year. 5 former heads of government, including Ali Laraid, also in pre-trial detention for more than a year. Also, several former ministers, judges, lawyers, journalists, leaders of political parties, trade unionists, simple activists on social networks. Kais Saied intervenes personally in the courts of justice. He declared on the television channel at the 8 o'clock news that anyone who dares to exonerate those prosecuted for plotting against the security of the state will be considered as accomplice. He does not know the principle of presumption of innocence and the right to a fair trial despite teaching law at the university. This is a warning to judges who can be dismissed at any time if they do not respect the orders of Kais Saied. Judges today work in fear of being dismissed from office at any time, and the investigating judge in the case of conspiracy against state security declared at the end of a hearing and to justify his warrant of deposition before lawyers and their client, your mother cries rather than mine. Also, several lawyers whose role according to the Constitution of 2014 and the decree law on the profession of lawyers at August 22, 2011 is to defend human rights and freedoms and enjoy immunity in the exercise of their profession, are also persecuted and even imprisoned times by military courts for simply having mentioned and defend the case of their clients during interviews, radio or television, or for having asked the police to respect the law and the Constitution and to be a Republican and neutral police force. This neither the judges who are supposed to protect rights, rather to protect rights and freedom, and lawyers who are supposed to defend the human rights and freedoms exercise their noble missions in very difficult condition. It is also a climate of fear and even terror that reign in the country. Several businessmen and young in employment, often clandestinely, have left the country where there is almost no investment. There is almost no investment, employment, and inflation rates continue to rise, and our relationships with more of our neighbors and friends are at an all-time low. Today, there are currently no less than 14 cases for conspiracy against state security. All the people involved in these cases are respectable personalities and well known for their peaceful political activities and advocate democratic and peaceful means to change the regime. Conspiracy against state security presupposes the use of force and the weapons, but none of the accused use this means a simple meeting for lunch or coffee to discuss the economic, social, or political situation to prepare an after native to the power in place after the election. These activities are qualified by the Kais Saied prosecutors as a plot against state security. Meeting diplomats, ambassadors, or others is considered by the prosecution as a plot against the external security of the state. Accusation is based on the testimony of XX and XXX that neither the lawyers nor the accused have seen and confronted. In the case involving Khayyam Turki and Kamal al-Taif and Ridab al-Haj and Ghazi Chaouachi and how it's called, and the others, we note that the investigations began in February 2023, following the arrest of Khayyam Turki and the seizure of his mobile phone by the police, where we found that Khayyam Turki had contacts with ambassadors, in particular from France, Italy, Spain, European Union, the person also in charge of affairs from the United States, etc., whom he invited to his home or they invited him. These relations were considered as conspiracy against the security and the state. The lawyers of Khayyam Turkey and others requested the hearing of these diplomats without result. Why? Because, as the prosecutor claimed, if there is a conspiracy, these diplomats should be considered as accomplices, but the prosecution issued a press release to affirm that no related to the diplomats and that they can carry out their mission without no hindrance. Of course, the judge refused the requested the hearing of diplomats. Today, the period of provisional detention, which is a maximum of 14 months according to the law, has expired, and the accused must be released, but they are still in prison, being considered to this day to be in a situation of arbitrary detention. They have started a hunger strike to protest and raise awareness about their situation. As information, I would like to say that more than 40, yesterday, more than 40 lawyers signed a petition demanding the immediate release of their colleagues, Rida Belhaj and Ghazi Chaouachi. Also, as I say, the former president, also the former president of Tunisian Bar Association, Chaouachi, started a hunger strike yesterday at the lawyer's house with a sit-in to express his protest against the harassment and attacks on his rights, and also against the attacks on the rights of the defense and the obstacles and difficulties encountered every day by lawyers in the performance of their work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kilani. Our second panelist is Salsabil Shalali, Director for Tunisia at Human Rights Watch. Please go ahead, Salsabil.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Redwan. Thank you, Kilani. So just to continue on that, as already mentioned, maybe in the presentation, in today's Tunisia, we have dozens of people that are behind bars for their statements or opinions, for their associative or political activities, or detained without evidence for political reasons. And this is exactly the so-called conspiracy case really is emblematic of that. This is a major step backwards in terms of human rights in Tunisia, and arbitrary arrest and detention are today at the core of Kais Saied's system of repression. Since July 25, Kais Saied government has methodically attacked not only democratic institutions, but also individual and collective freedoms. We have reached at the point where the last pillars of democracy are really hanging on a thread, and this is the independent civil society, but also the press and the media. So I think Kilani detailed more on the conspiracy case, how this is emblematic of the situation, how it deprived people from their freedom and their rights arbitrarily on the basis of serious accusations that include terrorism, because it's really the anti-terrorist law of 2015 that is used against those opponents and critics of the president, and without any credible evidence that is presented until now by the judicial authorities, and yet they're imprisoned for over 14 months. Additionally to that, we are really several of the people that are detained in this case are also seeing other prosecutions against them for their public statements for a lot of them, and the multiplication of the prosecutions against critics, lawyers, opponents of the authorities are also a strategy to actually keep them in detention at all costs. So beyond this case, I would like to speak more specifically about the growing number of prosecutions against people who have simply exercised their freedom of expression, and in some cases because they exercise their profession of journalist. About freedom of expression, we clearly see that, if to mention some example, a Nahda leader, Rached Ghannouchi, was sentenced to 15 months in prison on appeal for incitement under the anti-terrorism law for a statement he made at a funeral in February 2022. This is an example, and in addition of that, he's also detained in another case for a public statement. An artist, Rached Tambura, who painted actually a stencil of the president to denounce abuses against migrants from the continent, and who shared photos of this painting on the internet on his Facebook page, was arrested in July last year and sentenced in December to 2 years in prison on the basis of the Decree 54 on cybercrime for spreading false news in order to harm a public official. Just to mention another example, Nasruddin Halimi, an individual, was arrested in November 2022 and convicted for Facebook posts criticizing the army and other Facebook publication supporting a member of the opposition. He actually spent 14 months in pre-trial detention before being sentenced in March of last year to 7 years of imprisonment by the CAF military court, including under Decree 54 on cybercrime. So are just 3 examples of the dozens of people that are behind bars today, but they show that the authorities are acting in retaliation against all kinds of criticism, that they imprison people for peaceful statements and place them actually in preventive, in pre-trial detention, when according to international law, but also the Tunisian criminal code of criminal procedure, preventive detention should be an exceptional measure, which must be justified by imperative reasons. And it also shows that actually Tunisian authorities are still continuing to use military courts to try civilians. So just maybe to come back on the use of this Decree 54, for those who are not familiar with it, the Decree Law 54 was promulgated by the president in September 2022, and it is a dangerous law in several aspects. First, because it criminalizes the dissemination of false news and provides for harsh sentences, 5 to 10 years in prison for offenses relating to expression that are actually very vaguely defined. When it's a public servant that is targeted, it's actually 10 years. The punishment is 10 years in prison instead of 5. The Article 24 of this decree law actually leaves the door open to abuse and targeting of dissident voices. This decree law has become really a growing threat to freedom of expression, but also freedom of the press, because we are seeing the authorities using it increasingly. Mainly, it's Article 24 on the dissemination of false news. But this is At the same time, defamation should always be considered as civil offense, not a criminal one, and the public figure should not be protected further protected than others from criticism. But at the same point, what I'm speaking about this decree is also because some provision of this decree 54 are also in blatant violation of the right to privacy, as it grants the authority broad powers to monitor individuals on telecommunication network, collect personal data, and intercept private communication. And maybe a last point about it is that the Code of Military Justice is applicable in the enforcement of the decree, and when trying civilians in military courts is contrary to international standards on the right to fair trial. And until now, at least 2 civilians have been convicted by military courts under the decree 54. We can mention the case of Chaouachi, who is also one of the opponents accused in the so-called conspiracy case, but also the case I mentioned earlier of Nasreddin Halimi. Most of the cases we documented at Human Rights Watch around this decree were actually initiated following complaints by government official or institution, the Minister of Justice, Religious Affairs, the former Ministry of Interior, but also the election body or the Directorate of Prisons or the Police Union, to give other example. But maybe to also try to speak about the prism of the press freedom in this context, we have observed an escalation in the attack on the media and against independent journalists. In addition to the judicial harassment of certain journalists and the fact that at least 2 journalists are behind bars today in Tunisia, it's Shada Hajambarat, but also Mohamed Bougaleb, we are actually seeing this decree used against journalists and media figures. It's used in different manners. First, to initiate complaints against them, by government bodies or representative. At least 28 people have been actually detained, prosecuted, or investigated on the basis of this decree law, according to our documents. Among them, at least 9 journalists or media figures are being prosecuted or investigated. And yet, at the same time, there is actually decree laws 115, 116 of 2011 that govern offenses committed by the press. So just to mention that this is also, it's a threat to the right of privacy, but actually also to the protection of journalistic sources when we see some of the provision of this decree. And at the same time, it is used by the authorities as a tool of dissuasion. No one is safe actually from prosecution in this decree today if someone expresses any opinion online, and this is why it leads to self-censorship, particularly in the media field today. It doesn't mean that the authorities are not at the same time using other repressive provisions of the penal code or the telecommunication code, but we're really seeing an emphasis on that. Maybe just to mention a last point, it's really like to put, it was mentioned already by Sikilani, but to come back to the context of the judiciary under this prosecution, and the fact that the executive is actually on a tight grip on the judiciary since the dissolution of the Supreme Court and the other attacks on the independence of the judiciary. And today, the fact that the guarantees of access to fair trial and due process are not guaranteed for all those who are prosecuted in this context, in the so-called conspiracy case, but also for the people who are actually prosecuted for exercising their rightfully their rights to expression or just doing their work as journalists. Thank you.
Thank you, Salsabil. We will have more time for Q&A later on, but we just have one question right now from Professor Bill Lawrence about the number of political prisoners and those who have been arrested for any kind of political offense, including freedom of speech. Does Human Rights Watch or Mr. Kilani, the Lawyers Association, do they have a number of the total? Do they have an estimate of the total number of political prisoners and people who have been arrested for under Article 54, for example, any kind of political offense? Is there a number? Do you have an estimate? We can't hear you, Abdul Razak. You're muted.
We?
Yes. Please go ahead.
For example, for the case of the coup d'etat, for the last case, there is now 40 people are indicted in this case, including non-Tunisian people and people with dual nationality. For example, I think that you have about 24 lawyers. You have about 10 judges. You have about 6 or 7 journalists. You have about 100 persons who are activists in the réseau social media. There is no number. We haven't number. Even lawyers know the cases of their clients, but we know the most important case now is this case, the case of the Khayyam Turki and the others, which the number is now 40 people who are indicted in this case.
So according to your estimate, that's a total of about 170 in total that you know of, 170 people.
I think that yes, about.
Okay. Salsabil, do you have a count or an estimate?
I can give an estimate. So I would say that it's over 50 people that are actually detained for political reasons, peaceful expression or activism, and the so-called conspiracy case. Actually, lots of people are in this one, but we have a lot of individuals that are just prosecuted for cases, individual cases for, like, as I said, publication on internet. So I would say over 50, and I really would like to highlight the fact that this is really not representative of, like, it's not a definite number, because this is the information we have as organization based in Tunis, when we have information from the lawyers, from the victims, from their families, and it's sometimes hard to have, like, the big picture on what is happening in the territory. Some information came to us later, and also a lot of people are actually scared to speak about their case, to make that public, and this is really tells something about the atmosphere right now in Tunisia.
Sorry, Mr. Radwan. I can speak?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I forget that there is the case of the which is called Tasfir, قضية التسفير, travel for the region where there is war, like Syria and Iraq, etc. We found in this case, I remember now, because I forget, 800 persons who are people, 800 people who are accused in this case. In the first person is Ali Al-Araid, and his trial will begin, I think, soon, because yes.
Wow, that's a large number. Okay, now we'd like to focus on two cases of political prisoners, well-known politicians and political leaders. One is Rached Ghannouchi, the president of the Nahda party, and the other is Ghazi Chaouachi, the Secretary General of the Tayyar Demokrati. Let's start with Mr. Ghannouchi. Yusra is his daughter. Yusra, welcome. You have the floor. You have about 12 minutes. Tell us about what's happened with Mr. Ghannouchi, please.
Thank you. So, hello, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. And thank you, Dr. Radwan and CSID, for this webinar and this this opportunity to remember and remind everyone about the ongoing plight of the increasing number of political prisoners in Tunisia. And thank you all for joining us today, particularly with all that's happening around the world at the moment, and especially in Gaza, and all the protests that this is triggering out of the realization of our individual responsibility for championing freedom and opposing injustice wherever they may be. And equally, it's important not to forget those who are sacrificing their freedom to continue demanding justice and democracy and freedom for all Tunisians. So today is the 379th day for my father, Rached Ghannouchi, in prison. Like all the other critics of Kais Saied who have been targeted since his power grab, my father has been targeted because he has been one of the earliest and most prominent voices of opposition to Kais Saied's power grab, describing his so-called exceptional measures announced on the 25th of July 2021 as illegal, unconstitutional, and amounting to a coup against Tunisia's democracy, and calling for opposing them and repealing them. In fact, as Mr. Abdelrazak Gilani mentioned, this was the first case out of a very long case of a list of charges against my father. The first one was the case of the online plenary session called by my father as Speaker of Parliament to assess the constitutionality of these so-called measures. So that was on the 30th of March 2022. And on the same day, Kais Saied ordered his justice minister to charge all the MPs who took part in that session, ironically, for an attempted coup. It's important also to remember that comes after the dissolution of the Supreme Judicial Council, which took place a month earlier. So we see this pattern as Kais Saied took gradually more and more control of the judiciary, we see him using it as a tool to target his opponents. So February, we see the dissolution of the Supreme Judicial Council. March, we see this first summons for my father to be interrogated for this parliamentary online session, where MPs voted unanimously to repeal Kais Saied's 25th of July 2021 measures. After that, we see a succession of summons, 8 in addition to this, so 9 in total charges, all the way until his arrest on the 17th of April 2023, which was mentioned by Salsabil, following his speech at the headquarters of the National Salvation Front, in this publicly available speech where he denounced the coup and those who welcomed the coup, and said that those who still wish to exclude any group in Tunisia, whether they be leftists or Islamists or others, would be laying the ground for civil war in Tunisia. So for this, he was charged with incitement against the state. So this was the initial charge for which he was arrested on the 17th of April, which was the 27th night of Ramadan at the time. After that, we see the reopening of old cases that had been since Kais Saied come into power, for which my father had been interrogated, and judges had decided that there was no evidence and rejected these cases. We see the reopening of some of these, and we see the opening of new cases, all of which are politically motivated and fabricated. There's no time, obviously, to go through the details, but just so after the initial interrogation in March 2022, the second case for which he was interrogated was the Nama Association case. Nama is an NGO in Tunisia, relationship. So in July 2022, he was summoned, and again, most of these are under the anti-terrorism judicial poll. So he was interrogated in July 2022. He was interrogated again in September 2022 as part of the so-called Tarout case, where, as again was mentioned, my father had said during a funeral of a party member that member had no fear of any ruler or tyrant, and a member of a police union said that this is incitement against the police. So he was interrogated as part of this case in 2022, and he was the judge decided to maintain him on bail. But again, after he was arrested in April 2023, this case was reopened, and a verdict was issued as part of this case. In August 2022, my father was interrogated as part of that, the Tarout case. Then in May 2023, he was interrogated as part of the same case. In May 2023, this is when the verdict was issued for 1 year imprisonment as part of this case, which was later at the appeal stage was increased to 15 months. And this is being appealed again. The fourth case, which Mr. Kilani has mentioned, was in September 2022. My father was interrogated as part of the case, claiming he was involved in facilitating travel to conflict zone. Again, completely fabricated and politically motivated. The fifth case is the Instalingo case, which is a case that had started years before, and my father was never mentioned as part of the list of defendants. But later, a new case was opened, and a number of politicians, businessmen, and security officers were included in this case, including my father. So he was interrogated as part of this case in November 2022. The sixth case is a case where a police officer claimed that he has a videotape of my father meeting with extremists, which you could not provide or prove. So my father was interrogated as part of that case, and the judge rejected that because of lack of evidence. In February 2023, he was interrogated for 8 hours as part of that. The seventh case is the case for which he was arrested, the National Salvation Front speech. The eighth case is the so-called secret apparatus case. So this started in 2018. And the judge found no evidence, and a new case was reopened in June 2023. And the ninth case is the foreign financing case. Again, a fabricated and politically motivated case for which my father has been sentenced to 3 years in prison, which is also being appealed. So for all these charges, my father was interrogated often for 10 hours or more during the night, mostly. But before the dissolution of the Judicial Council and before the dismissal of the judges by Kais Saied and the increasing pressures, judges had interrogated my father but decided not to detain him. After his detention, we see the reopening of these cases, and my father realized that there was no respect at all of any standards for a fair trial, and he has since the verdict was issued 1 month after his arrest, he has informed his lawyers that he will not be cooperating, he will not attend any more interrogations, as he sees his arrest and detention as a political decision and nothing to do with the law at all. And as a result, also, what we are doing outside is, because this is all politically motivated and the decisions are being made by Kais Saied and through his orders to his justice minister, what needs to be done is to keep on, putting pressure on Kais Saied, on the Tunisian authorities, on all those working with Kais Saied and facilitating these daily violations, to put an end to this. So, with other families of political prisoners, we have brought cases outside Tunisia. We have filed for sanctions against Kais Saied, his justice minister, his defense minister, his interior minister, in the UK, in the EU, in the US. We have also filed a case at the African Court on Human and People's Rights last May. As you know, the court had already ruled that Kais Saied's exceptional measures were unconstitutional, and obviously Kais Saied did not comply, although the rulings of the court are binding, and Tunisia as a member is supposed to comply with these decisions. But it is important to continue doing this, to put pressure on Kais Saied. And also, we have also filed at the International Criminal Court a few months ago, and we are doing this with a number of other families of political prisoners, as well as the family of Rida Bouzerian, who was killed during the protests of the revolution anniversary in 2022, calling for an investigation, a real investigation into his death. So we are continuing with these actions, and we call on anyone who believes in democracy and human rights around the world to continue putting pressure on Kais Saied to restore the democracy and human rights in Tunisia. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusra. As you know, Sheikh Rached is not only a politician and a political leader, he's also one of the foremost leaders, intellectual leaders and scholars of Islam and democracy. He has written over 20 books on human rights and democracy in Islam. So he's very well respected all over the Muslim world. Tell us about his conditions right now, his health. How is he doing? A lot of people would like to know and are asking about under what conditions is he being held? How is he doing health-wise and morally?
He's obviously like other prisoners. He's he faces the same conditions. He doesn't have any special treatment or special conditions. He's doing well. His health is fine. Obviously, he's 82 years old, so it's not the same as when he was a political prisoner when he was in his 40s. But he's still, he's still optimistic. He's still continuing from inside prison. As you know, he's been on a hunger strike twice already. To demand his release and in solidarity with other political prisoners as part of other cases who were on hunger strike. And as he wrote recently, although he does not like to romanticize prison, he, as he described it, it is one of the most brutal institutions invented by mankind. Because it deprives them of the most precious thing they have, that is their freedom. However, he's trying to use his time there and do all the reading and writing and exercising he was not able to do outside prison. But it remains that it is a great injustice to be deprived of your freedom simply for calling for the restoration of democracy.
Thank you very much, Yusra. We now go to Mr. Ilyas Chaouachi, the son of Mr. Ghazi Chaouachi, who is also a political prisoner and his former Secretary General. I guess he still has the title of Secretary General of Fatayar, right? No, it has been.
No.
Has been okay. So Ilyas, tell us about Mr. Ghazi. How is he doing? What are the conditions of his arrest, and what are the charges against him? And in general, how is he doing?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Radwan. Thank you for all attendees. Hello, everyone. Special hello to you, Yusra, since it has been a while that we didn't see each other. Yeah, actually, brief introduction of my father, Ghazi Chaouachi. He's a lawyer, still a lawyer, even if he is in prison, because he's helping and working together with all his lawyers on this case and other cases, since he's faced by 3 cases, one of Decree 54, one other that I cannot translate it, ارتكاب أمر موحش. Even in Arabic, it's so complicated to understand it. And the third one, which is known, it's the plot or conspiracy against the internal security of the state. Ghazi
Chaouachi probably means insulting the president. Is that?
Yeah. Maybe yes, yeah, insulting. Even we cannot, we are not able to insult anyone when we are on the TV show or the radio. But okay, let's consider it as it. He is the next MP. He's the next minister, even for a while in 2020 with the government of Lies Farfer for 6 months, and he's the ex-general secretary of At-Tayyar political party, and he quit the party in January, and he was January 2023, and he was arrested in February 2023. So yeah, today with a heavy heart, as at each time, at each webinar, at each conference, we have as a family great concern regarding this arrest that happened in February 25th of last year, 2023. So today it's up to 14 months and 12 days of my father arrest, and several other political prisoners as Abdelhamid Shlasi, Rida Abdelhaj, Aysam Shabi, Khayyam Turki, Jawhar bin Barak, that they had charges of terrorism and other penal charges, which is, for me, it's really absurd to think that my father, who is a peaceful political party activist, would ever conspire to harm the state or its leaders. Actually, in my opinion, the accusations of plotting to assassinate the president and possessing explosives are completely baseless and without any evidence, of course. Actually, the situation today, it's from a way so ridiculous, but also extremely dangerous, unfortunately. My father and other prisoners are facing 17 terrorist charges that could lead them to the death penalty. I implore you to review their case, which is already published in all the media, even Facebook, and ensure that justice is served. Actually, the politically motivated attack since the coup of Kais Saied in July 2021 is still dissenting voices, and it's imperative. And it's imperatively political more than judicial. Today, as Mr. Abdelrazak described, the judges are working under the fear and under the blackmailing of the Minister of Justice, who is Laila Jafal, and what we can say today, that the situation presents a significant challenge for this regime who is making a crucial environment, and I'm with in this webinar, probably it's already recorded, so I can say to the Tunisian people that all of you need to take action to rectify this grave injustice and uphold of principle of democracy and freedom of speech that we are living in today in our country. Actually, we will not rest until our fathers and the other prisoners are released and justice is served automatically. We need to fight for it. We need to not keep it going like this. We cannot standardize with those repressions. And I think if no resolution is reached, we will not hesitate to pursue legal actions against this authoritarian regime in international courts, as we already started with Yusra, with Kauthar Ferjani, daughter of Said Ferjani. As well, this flagrant abuse of power cannot go unchecked, and we will remain fighting for the rights of our loved ones until they are freed. And not only our loved ones, like our parents, but also for all other political prisoners that we are not, that they are different than us, but in those kinds of situations that we can we can challenge people if they have principles, if they have value or not. For example, I can defend Rached Ghannouchi, obviously, Ali Al-Arayed, Mohammed Bughaleb, and even Abir Moussi or Riyad bin Fadl. They are all unjustly incarcerated today. As well, I'm speaking today to share the unbearable burden that my family has been carrying, even since my father was unjustly incarcerated 15 months ago, almost. This situation has plunged us into deep despair. I cannot hide it, of course, as my father sits behind bars, suffering from worsening health conditions such as cervical arthros, osteoarthritis, maybe, and high cholesterol.
Arthritis.
Those things my father didn't have it before being in the jail, but now he's suffering from worsening health conditions, unfortunately. In addition to my father imprisonment, my mother, who works as a judge, has been facing a repression. She is a judge since 36 years. So she has been facing repression in her workplace. Her job has become a constant source of stress and fear for the whole family as she navigates the challenges of being the wife of political prisoner. As for myself, of course, I have been sentenced to 3 years in prison already last January because I've ارتكاب مرموحش against the president, insult or criticize the president when I made an intervention in a TV show by phone at the TSID. So they have sentenced me of 3 years or condemned me of 3 years of prison. But hopefully that I'm here. So I've been forced to stay here in France, and now I'm living in exile abroad. And I didn't see my family since almost 3 years today, and especially didn't see my father or hear his voice, or even I cannot read his letters because he's classified as terrorist, so he cannot even read books or write letters and send it out of the prison. The separation from my family has been heartbreaking, obviously, and we are determined to stay strong and united despite the distance that separates us. Today our family is scattered and torn apart, but we continue to fight for justice and hold on to hope that my father and all other comrades needs to be released. We refuse to let the circumstances break us, and we draw on strength from each other's love and support. We pray, of course, for the day when my father, Ghazi Chaouachi, will be released for his unlawful detention, but we are still being proud on him. And we are quite sure that my father psychological health or status today is better than other people who are sleeping in the castle. What else? Today we all need help from you, from all friends, and even all people who are believing that we cannot live in a different way than democracy in Tunisia, and we cannot skip all the democratic process that we initiated since afterward the revolution of 2011. My father, as you know, has detained unjustly by the current regime for because he criticized Kais Saied directly, and he defended the freedom of expression and all other freedom that Tunisian must have. The regime is still fabricating political cases against anyone who dares to criticize it. It including trade unionists, politicians, businessmen, judges, journalists, and all other activists. No one is safe from its wrath. It's a racist, with evidences. Of course, we not go into details on it. It's a populist with its speeches, fascist. And he's learning from Giorgia Meloni, by the way, and still failed the regime on the economic and social and even diplomatic sides. So this regime, since 3 years today, governing alone, didn't make any success to the Tunisian people. This regime has dismantled all the structures that we have built over the past decade after the revolution, except the organization of presidency, obviously. Today, anyone who dares to speak out against this regime is accused of plotting against it. As Mr. Abdelrazak described it, in 1 year and a half, we have more than 14 cases of plots or conspiracy against the security of state. We have seen those cases, and it was really funny to read each case separately, but it's still been extremely dangerous because this regime is supported by the army and by the police, of course. We are reaching out today as a family to all Tunisian people for support, of course, in our fight for justice and freedom. Our family obviously is tired, but will not give up until our father is released and the oppressive regime is brought down. That's our goal. Our goal is not to release Ghazi Chaouachi. Ghazi Chaouachi is one example of, I don't know, 15 or over 100 other persons. Our goal is to bring down this regime of Kais Saied. So all Tunisian people may and must help, which could make the union, and we can be united to make a significant difference in our struggle. In addition, today, more than 520 lawyers, including 6 deans, and thanks Mr. Abdelrazak who signed on this petition as well. In 24 hours, we collect 520 lawyer signatures to call for the release of their fellow lawyers, Ghazi Chaouachi and Rida Belhaj, who is my uncle, by the way, who are arbitrarily detained, and their arrest has exceeded the legal 14 months mentioned by the law. So today they are considered as kidnapped, not even incarcerated. And we call on all lawyers to participate in the strike planned tomorrow at the court by the lawyers' organization in Tunis, the capital, in order to put pressure on the release of those lawyers, Ghazi and Rida. I want to underline the last thing, saying that bad things happen only to others. Like we say it in French, ça n'arrive qu'aux autres. No, it's not true. This is a lie. C'est un mensonge. Do not trust it. No one is immune, because the machine of repression of Kais Saied swallows everyone. And if this regime will remain governing, I don't hope it, of course, but if it happens, all even the Zaqafna, even the people who are supporting this regime will be swallowed by this repression machine. So with a heartfelt gratitude to all friends, to you, Mr. Radwan Masmoudi, to Human Rights Watch, to all other organizations, Camarade and other political activists who are supporting us, thank you. I would take advantage of this webinar to thank them. We need to keep it going together with all our difference, but with all our belief on freedom and justice. We can support during these dark times and overcome this pain. Thank you for taking time to listen to me and to our family plea.
Thank you very much, Ilyas. You have our full sympathy and support to you and your family, and to Mr. Ghazi Chaouachi, who was a dear friend of mine. He is a dear friend of mine. I have known him very well, and I met him several times in the past 10 years when we had the freedom to meet and speak without being sent to jail for meeting or for having coffee together. I also echo your appeal to all Tunisians to unite and to put aside their differences and to work for a better future for Tunisia, where all Tunisians can be free to think what they want and to speak their mind with respect, of course, but freely, you know, to criticize the government, to criticize the president, to criticize anything they want to criticize. I hope and believe that the Tunisians will get back their democracy. That democracy will return and human rights will return to Tunisia, because we deserve better. We deserve to live in freedom and dignity. And I think that the Tunisians are now becoming more and more aware of the dangers of this one-man rule, you know, of having one person control everything and control all the institutions. Anyways, we have about 12 minutes left for Q&A. One question from Mr. Professor Bill Lawrence. He said that when he recently met with the US ambassador, the ambassador expressed concern that Tunisian opposition no longer meets with him, and that he's concerned that people get arrested for meeting with him. In the 2000s, before the revolution, of course, people who met with the US ambassador were sometimes safer, but this government is much more shameless. Any ideas on how the US should better engage and handle contacts within Tunisia? Any ideas or suggestion on what the US ambassador or other ambassadors in Tunisia can do to help support human rights and democracy in Tunisia?
Can I just say that, yes, this Kais Saied and his regime have been shameless, because those who claim to believe in these, common values of human rights and democracy and freedom have been too quiet, or have only expressed, timid concern, which has clearly not had any effect on Kais Saied, and they have not gone beyond that. They have not shown any concrete actions. They have not called this a coup. And they have not, changed their dealings with Tunisia. They have approved all these violations, all this coup, and refused to call it a coup. And that's why we have arrived at this point where people are too scared to talk to the US ambassador, and he should not be surprised, because he has not condemned explicitly and publicly this case. Where politicians are thrown in jail for 14 months for meeting diplomats. These diplomats, the Italian ambassador, I think the French ambassador, the Spanish ambassador, and others who have been named in these cases have been too quiet. They have not condemned this case. They have not taken any action. In fact, it's the opposite. We have seen them visiting Tunisia. We have seen them giving Kais Saied photo opportunities and legitimizing all the continuing and worsening violations. despite the fact that not only the fact that violations are happening and restrictions of liberties, but also the deterioration of the economy itself, and the fact that they can see that he is failing to solve any of the problems he claimed to have made his exceptional measures in order to get rid of democracy so that he can fix all these problems. We have only seen the deterioration of the economy and all these problems and the emergence of unprecedented problems and crises in Tunisia. But we see Tunisia's so-called democratic partners doing very little apart from expressing concern. So I would say that they should not be surprised that Tunisia's government is continuing to behave in this shameless manner.
Thank you, Yusra. Anybody else wants to answer the question about what the U.S. ambassador or other ambassadors can do to support democracy and human rights in Tunisia?
Yeah, maybe I would like to add to that, as Yusra said, I'm not surprised of people's reaction when meeting with foreign diplomats. But at the same time, I think this is, it shouldn't be an excuse to not try to meet with the civil society in Tunisia, with the opposition in Tunisia. There is safe ways to do it, and this should be done. Like, it's not a justification to avoid dialogue. And I think because of so many diplomats and foreign embassies have been mentioned, in particular in the so-called conspiracy case, they should have further responsibility in calling for their release, in mobilizing when there is decision around them. And I think it's very also important that the diplomats, as they have a role also of observers, commit to actually do the trial monitoring if we get there soon. Like, this is also important, and even further for those who are mentioned in the case. I think also most of the embassies and people, like the countries, the partners of Tunisia, should actually think carefully about their funding when they fund organizations, government entities that are today responsible of human rights abuses.
Thank you. Mr. Abdrazak or Elias, do you want to add something?
The same remark, Mr. Radwan. I am surprising that countries like France, Italy, or USA have not reacted about the case for conspiracy against state security. It's surprising, given that their representatives are accused by Tunisian government of conspiring to meet nationals of a country where their officials are assigned. So it's strange. And the second remark is that all the accused risk capital punishment. So I think that we have to do an international campaign to inform the international opinion about this case, which is a strange case, because in fact it's not a case, it's a ridicule case, because it's a case empty. There is nothing which accused the people who are in this case.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence says that embassies are also afraid for their staff. He was shocked by how much the embassy feels besieged. When he went to the embassy, he felt he had to talk my way past Tunisian security to get in, not just American hired security. My meeting with the ambassador was at the residence. So that what Mr. Lawrence is saying is that the ambassadors and the staff also feel threatened and besieged in Tunisia.
Mr. Radwan.
Yes, please.
Maybe my comment will be different than yours and the other president comment, but I think that we are not going to wait for the American or other foreign countries or ambassadors to help or support us as long as the Tunisian people are still silent and cannot support democracy on their country, on their land. So we'll not make a call or appeal other foreign countries to support us when Tunisian people is silent and checking their only interests. As well, they are only those ambassadors. They are only looking for their own interests, and we can say that we can see that or observe it or perceive it if it's not the same cases on the Palestine war that's happening today as genocide on Gaza, and they only react when it's beneficial for them. And plus, for the record and for the history, because I'm the son of Ghazi Chaouachi, and I'm political activist even before my father. Let me say that for the record, it was those ambassadors, the American one, Heather, Natasha, the Italian ambassador, the Spanish one, that they who wanted to meet my father and other politicians. It was based on their demand. It was based on their call. So
their request.
And their request, exactly. And it was following their request, as you said. So there they are without democratic values today, and they are playing the blind on what's happening on the human rights states in Tunisia. And I think we must gain time, or let's say optimize our times, to raise awareness among our people, Tunisian people, better than trying to call embassies.